What defines a heart for youth? Find out today on a Heart for Youth podcast.
This episode is sponsored by Anchor. Anchor is your one-stop shop for podcasting. It's 100% free, and you can create a podcast directly from your phone or computer. Anchor distributes your podcast to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and many more. Simply download the Anchor app on your iPhone or Android, or go to anchor.fm to get started.
This week I'm on the phone with AC Cordell. AC, tell me a little about yourself.
Well, I'm 6 foot tall and sexy.
That's a good start. I don't think I've ever had anybody start it that way.
Oh my goodness, I've been waiting for that one all day. No, I'm just playing. I am currently living in Detroit, Michigan, where I have my business, CW Consulting Firm, and also am a worship pastor currently. In times past, I've been a youth pastor, and so yeah, things are going well. Trying to survive this quarantine, and ready to get back to some sort of normalcy, I would say.
Right. So how did you end up in youth ministry, and how long were you in youth ministry?
Good question. The first go-around was, my dad was a pastor, so I grew up as a PK. So as a high school senior, I knew I was going to be going away to the university in Tennessee and going in for some ministry stuff. And so I did like an internship my senior year in high school at our youth group as a leader. And so that really helped a lot. We had a pretty large church, a large youth group in Detroit. And so that was a great experience for me. And then went off to school. And then my first full-time position when I left school was down in Miami, Florida, as a youth pastor and a worship pastor mixed. I had to do both. And started off with about 8 kids in the youth group, and I was there for just under 6 years. And in that time, in the first 2 years, we got to running about 120 kids, and had done a really neat thing in Miami. Probably wouldn't work in any other city in America, but some things that we were doing that were capturing young people. And because we competed with South Beach and Coconut Grove every weekend, so we were doing things to try to draw kids in, and that was very interesting. Got to the point where the youth group got so big, I made a decision to have them. They brought in another full-time children's or youth pastor, and I went full-time with the youth. And so that would be some of my, right in the very beginning, how I got started. Between those two, I did work at another church as a youth pastor and worship leader, and that was for I think 2.5, 3 years, and another great experience for me.
Wow.
That's about the extent of it as far as youth pastorship goes.
Yeah. So at what point did you realize that youth ministry was a passion of yours?
Well, I got to be honest. When I first started, I mean, my niche was in worship with music, but I realized that a lot of the stuff that I wanted to do music-wise, the adult church didn't really want to accept it, and so it was more widely accepted in the youth group. And so I just kind of got a niche to do worship with youth, and that's kind of where my passion really lied. And then being a leader, it just kind of gravitated towards, pastoring young people as well. And so I would say shortly after I moved to Miami, I really realized that because I'll be honest with you, when I took the job in Miami, my focus was music, and I was just going to help them, you know, kind of keep the youth group together type thing. And that was my mentality when I first went there. But after I was there for a couple of months, it really kind of shifted, and we started really focusing on building teams, and I started recognizing leaders that were in the church that could help, and we really grew it fast, really fast. Mm-hmm. When I left there, we were running about 500 teenagers on the weekends.
Wow.
From the stuff that we were doing. And so it was very successful. I was and here's the beauty about it to this day. That was 20 years ago. And to this day, I still have students, some of my former students that I talk to on a regular basis. The things that we did had a great impact on them, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you had a really good impact on some of your students there. What would you say was the hardest moment in youth ministry, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, wow. That's easy. One, I've had some difficult times, but there's one that stands far above the rest, and it actually happened in Miami about my fourth year. We were doing a car wash, and the church property, the campus was, they owned a whole city block. So there were intersections on all four corners of the campus, and we were doing a car wash on the busiest side, and we probably had about 50 of our kids there, a bunch of our leaders. We were doing our high school, not our junior high kids at the time. So high school students were out there, and we were selling hot dogs, the whole 9 yards. You know what we do, try to raise money, doing car washes. And
right.
I seen from the distance there was this big car, and it was flying. And right before the intersection, there was a train track. And this car comes flying, hit the train track, never stopped at the stop sign. And as it was coming through, I yelled at the kids that were standing on the corner with the signs, and they turned their heads to see what I was yelling at, and never seen the car come and just wiped out a group of kids. We lost one teenager through it. Another one paralyzed from the waist down. She was a high school cheerleader, just accepted a scholarship to University of Miami. Another girl that was broken bones and battered up. She was able to come out of it, but it was then and still is probably the worst moment ministry-wise when it comes to losing someone like that, and then all those kids. There's like 8 kids that got hit total.
Wow.
Some of them just kind of ricocheted off the car and flew through the air and bumps and bruises. But I'll never forget getting underneath that car and seeing the first one, which was the one that was paralyzed. I seen her, and I could tell, her legs were facing a different direction than her upper torso was. So I knew her back was broken. I just got underneath there, and I just began to pray with her and just really tried to calm her down. She was going into shock. And while I was under the car talking to her, I seen 2 other bodies, and that was one of the most horrific moments, I think I would say, in my ministry period. In 20 plus years, that's got to be probably at the top. But definitely in youth ministry, that was one of the most heart-wrenching, hardest times of ministry for me.
Yeah. So how did you overcome that? How did you get past the feeling of guilt or whatever feelings you had?
Sure. I dealt with guilt. Fortunately for us, the police chief of the Miami Police Department went to our church, and they had investigators that were there on the scene quickly. And when they came, after they did a full investigation, he came and sat down with me, and he said, "Let me just tell you, that car was going so fast that even if you hadn't said anything to them, it wouldn't have mattered. They never seen it coming." and they wouldn't have had time to move out of the way to change the outcome. So, in some ways it kind of helped, because I really, for probably 6-8 months, maybe almost a year, I really just carried that blame as if, I'm the one. If I wouldn't have said anything, maybe they could get out of the way type thing. But I'll tell you, there was a couple of friends of mine that I had always leaned on, and they had leaned on me. We talked ministry, we talked troubles and challenges all the time, and I leaned on them a lot. But most importantly, the main one was my dad. My dad, matter of fact, probably 8 months into it or after it, I called my dad and I said, "Listen, I think I'm going to step down. I'm going to resign. I think I'm just going to come home, and I'm done with ministry. I can't live with this." And he prayed with me, he talked to me, but the next day he calls me and he says, "Hey, I need you to do me a favor, meet me at the Miami airport." And he gave me a time frame, and I said, "Okay, what's going on?" He says, "I just got to take care of some business. Can you meet me there?" And I said, "Sure." Mm-hmm. So I meet him there at the airport. I get in, I see him. He comes up, hugs my neck, and I said, "All right, where are we going?" He said, "Go over here and get something to eat." And so we went and sat down, and I said, "Are you meeting somebody?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Who?" And he says, "You." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "My son's hurting, and my son needs his dad." And so, even to this day, 20 years ago, I can just, it's emotional just thinking about it, but my dad flew from Detroit to Miami just to come see his son and sit down and talk to me, and just gave me some wise counsel and read the word to me, and it just really helped me not to give up, not to throw in the towel. And the words that he said to me that day, I've never forgotten, and I've used it time and time again. He said, "That towel that you threw in, I want you to go over there and pick it up, wipe your face off with it, and get back in the game." And being a sports guy, I played high school and college sports, and he just knew what it would take to, get my attention. And so that's exactly what I did. Spiritually, I just walked over, picked it up, and he says, "Listen, when you wipe your face off, there's blood, there's sweat, there's tears, there's probably mud, from all the stuff you've been going through." He says, "Wipe it off and just get back in the game." And so, three of my close friends and then my dad, if it hadn't been for them, I don't know that I would even be in ministry today, because that's how hard the enemy attacked me after going through that situation.
Right. I mean, it's amazing how God uses people close to us to help us get through things.
Amen.
So when did you feel like what you were doing was working? When did you feel like you were making a difference in maybe one youth's life or like the whole group?
Well, that's a good question. And, I got to tell you that the whole experience in Miami was one of the greatest experiences of my life, and having to be the first real full-time position I had. But while I was there as a youth pastor, I started reaching out to a couple of different high schools that were near our church. And in the process, I was able to hook up with some athletes that played football and basketball and ran track. And at the time, I really didn't know it. I kind of have a suspicion on a couple of them because they were very good athletes. But I connected with them. They were helping me build. They were inviting them. These guys were studs. So if they said, "Hey, come with me to this party, we're going to meet here at this place," which was coming to the church, basically, and our youth facility, and people would just come out of the woodwork. And so I worked with them. I turned them into leaders, youth leaders, and they were just amazing. But some of those guys went on to play in the NBA, went on to play in the NFL. One of my close friends, Antrell Roll, who was drafted #1 draft pick by the Arizona Cardinals out of the University of Miami, and then he got traded to the New York Giants, and when he did, he became the highest paid safety in NFL history. And these are just some of the kids that I was blessed to pastor. And to this day, I can text him, I can call him, he'll answer the phone, be like, "What's up, Pastor?" And that's just the kind of relationship that I was able to build with a whole lot of students, a whole lot of people, and some of them, like I said, becoming multimillionaires playing sports, and then on top of that, just nurses and different people that came through our program that now live amazing lives, whether it's in ministry or whether it's in law enforcement. I just had a conversation just the other day with one of my close guys. His name's Aaron, and great basketball player. We love going at each other on the basketball court, but he's now a law enforcement officer, police department there in the Miami area. And man, just I'm proud of those guys and what they are able to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean that's great. What is your greatest memory to date in youth ministry? Is there something that really stands out, or a couple things?
You know, one of the things I think is about my third year there in Miami. For my birthday, I had no idea what was going on. And let me remind you, I was in Miami by myself. I didn't have any of my family, just a young guy, fresh out of school, interesting times in my life, basically. But I was there by myself. My birthday's coming around. Hadn't said anything to anybody. Nobody said anything to me. And I got a phone call from the lead pastor, and he was like, hey, listen, him and the first lady, they wanted to take me out to dinner that night for my birthday. And I was like, sure, no problem. I got nothing else planned. So that's what we did. We went and we ate at this Cuban steakhouse. It was amazing. Oh, my goodness, I love that place. But anyways, we left there, and we didn't head back towards either my house or their house, and we're going someplace else. And I just kind of sat there like, okay, and we pull up this place, and it was sort of like a place that you rent to have big wedding parties and all that kind of stuff. Well, anyways, they had gone out of their way and invited friends from all over the country, family members, and they were able to pull that off completely, secretive, and had one of the biggest birthday parties I've ever seen in my life. And that was about the third year in, and at that time we were running about 250, 300 kids. And I think about every single one of them showed up that night as well with parents. And it was one of the craziest birthdays I've ever seen in my life. But I think that moment, just the honoring that happened that day, the honoring to me, not just my birthday, but the fact that the many people that showed up was just a testament of how amazing the ministry was, and the people that I had to work with and partner with. Just all this coming together, and just that moment of honoring was probably one of the greatest moments of my youth ministry.
Wow, that's awesome.
The fact that my mom showed up and she didn't tell me at all that she was showing up with my sister and my two nieces, that was pretty cool. But how in the world they kept that from me, I have no idea.
Yeah. So what would you tell somebody going into youth ministry as like a youth pastor or an assistant youth leader? What is your advice to them?
Run away, quit ministry and run. No, I'm teasing, man. First thing I would say is this: if you don't have a heart for students, from high school all the way down, if you don't have a heart for them, and if you used to have a hard time, being around kids because they're loud or obnoxious, and you may need to rethink this. Because one thing about youth ministry is it's always loud, it's always fast-paced. You deal with so many different types of personalities and characters, and if you don't have the ability to transition with them as they transition, it's going to be hard. And one of the things that I just always tried to do was I tried to be their friend, but on the same token, they knew that I was their pastor. And so there was always a friendship, but there was also a respect level that didn't get crossed very often. Yeah, there were times that certain students would test it, but there's just a respect factor because I respected them greatly. I mean, I would go every week to one of the high schools at lunchtime. Back then I was able to do this. Go in, I would take pizzas with me and invite students that went to our youth group there and then their friends to come eat and just do things like that were really just earning respect factor from not just the ones that I knew, but the ones I didn't know. And so, just things like that that if you have the mindset that, listen, I'm in this to win it, and if you have the mindset that what the Bible says, win the loss at any cost, figure out a way to make it happen, and then go out to the highways and byways and compel. And that was one of the things, and I still use this to this day in ministry, is learning how to compel people to come in to the house of the Lord. And sometimes the way that the creativity that God will give you, it may not be original. I mean, it may be completely different than anybody else has done. It may not be accepted in certain churches and certain cities. So the things that we were doing in Miami, I can promise you wouldn't go when I was in Huntington, West Virginia. You know what I'm saying? There's two different types of people, two different types of – it's a different world down in South Florida. And so the way that we did things to compel them to come in, I mean, obviously we did everything by the Bible, and we did everything legal. We had some kids that may try to do some crazy things, but we always, did things by the word and also legally. And when you have the police chief going to your church, you can't get too crazy. But we did things that were just different, and it was because there was a creativity there, but there was also me understanding. Me being a white boy from Detroit, and then moving to Tennessee to go to college, that was a culture shock. But then leaving Tennessee and moving to Miami, which was a whole different culture shock. One of the things that I had to do quickly is just learn to observe what's going on, and then be able to adapt, and not feel like I have to do it the way that we did in Detroit, or how I learned in Tennessee. That we had to be able to adapt and be able to just listen to people's ideas, and then just be creative, more creative than I've ever been before in my life in that city. And if you can do that kind of stuff, you can be successful. And here's this is one thing that my dad taught me as well when I first left for ministry. Two things. He said, you can't please everybody, so don't try. That was the first thing he said that stuck with me. The second thing was this, if you, well, I just lost what the other one was. But anyways, the first thing was, it's so important that you can't please everybody, so don't try. And so one of the things I did is we just tried to build a team, and we would vote on things. We would make decisions as a team. Therefore, it wasn't like it was just Pastor AC telling us what to do. There was a whole leadership team that was coming together, figuring out what was the best practices for what we needed to do. And when we did that, there was just a unity that was stronger than ever. So I would say that identify some good leaders in your church that can help you, and then put some faith and trust in them. Give them some responsibilities as well. Don't try to do it on your own, because you can't do it on your own. And when that happens and you start making decisions, make decisions as a team. That way, if it doesn't work, all the fingers aren't always going to be pointed back at you. It's going to be pointed at the team. But also, when it does work, celebrate your victories together as a team. And now I remember what I was going to say. So basically, as a youth pastor, if you can help other people be successful, by default, you are successful. For example, when Antrell graduated at the University of Miami, actually, even while he was at Miami, he would always have me come to his games on Saturday. He had me there, got me to come in and do devotions with his team a couple times. That was respect factor. And as he began to get more successful at University of Miami University, it made me successful, because then other students that were in high school wanted to come to our church because I was the one that was the youth pastor for this guy. He's the number one draft pick. He's even talking about Jesus in interviews back, years ago. And then when he got drafted, he went to Arizona. One of the first things he did was, after he talked to his family, is he called me and he said, listen, pick a date. I want you to come out here. I'll buy your plane ticket. I got your pass to be on the field with me. And he says, and then I'll get your hotel and we'll hang out for a couple of days, and I want you to come out. And this is the kind of stuff that happened every single year. And I remember had another student, Don Carey, played for the Jacksonville Jaguars, played for the Detroit Lions. And I remember when he was playing for Detroit, I drove up to Detroit when Antrell played against Don. And let me tell you, that was one of the greatest moments of my life. I wasn't a youth pastor still then, but to watch Don wear number 26 for Detroit and played defense, and then watched Antrell wear number 26 for the Giants and played defense, both of them playing safety. And I actually bought 2 jerseys, one from each guy, cut them in half and sewed it together and wore a Lions and a Cardinals jersey, a Giants jersey. It was, well, like I said, one of the greatest days of my life just to see those 2 guys. And to this day, again, those 2 guys, call me, text me. I do the same with them, and relationships that we bond for eternity, I hope.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much all the questions I had for you. I know you've got several projects out. If you want to give a plug for those, that'd be great.
Well, listen, I besides being a worship pastor and being able to travel across the country like God's blessed me to do, I also do a few other things. I have my company, the CW Consulting Firm, and we consult churches and venues on lighting, sound, and projection. I also consult with pastors on what they're looking to do, new stage designs, things like that, which has been very successful across the country. I also am hosting a podcast and live stream for Facebook and social media called Young Lions, and it's spelled with a Lionz instead of an S. And Young Lions is something that we do right now. I've been really hammering on how the political and the biblical times are running simultaneously together, and so it's something that I've been doing during this quarantine that we're in. But normally I interview pro athletes, entertainers, worship pastors, just all kinds of people that I usually interview. Matter of fact, I got an interview with Rachel Mann. She is a CCM artist that is releasing some new music, I believe, tomorrow. So we've got an interview coming out next week with Rachel Mann. I'm pretty excited about. Matter of fact, I even interviewed your pastor, I believe, a while back, Pastor Jordan. So I'm excited about that. And then besides that, I produce music here in Detroit. We have a studio here, and just released a new project with an artist called Jesse Sparkman. And Jesse is a hip-hop rap artist that is a Christian, and got some great material, and I've been pretty excited about that too. So besides that, man, just being stir crazy and quarantine lockdown.
You've got a couple worship songs out, don't you?
Yeah, I got some of my music that's on all the different platforms. Just you can go search for AC Cordell. I've got a bunch that we're wanting to release, and just waiting for the time on that. Some of the stuff's already done. I got a few other ones that we're trying to finish up too. But really, to be honest with you, I don't release music just to release it. I want to make sure that what we're releasing is relevant to what's going on with the church, so that it can have a bigger and greater impact. So hopefully soon, Lord willing, we'll be releasing some more music. But yeah, you can find it on iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, SoundCloud, the whole 9 yards. Matter of fact, SoundCloud has a lot more of my music to listen to. But yeah, just go look for AC Cordell, and you can find pretty much all the music that's out there.
Awesome. All right, well, I thank you for coming on and spending the time to talk to me here and talk to the audience, and hope this helps people.
Yeah, me too, man. I hope that if you're wanting to go into ministry, especially the youth ministry, like I said, just make sure it's a calling, it's a passion that you have, and then when you do that, surround yourself with some good people in your ministry, and then people that just know you outside of ministry. And if I can be of any help to any youth pastor outside of your in-house ministry, don't hesitate to look me up, and be glad to talk to you at any time. So I appreciate, John, you thinking of me, and appreciate the opportunity to share.
Thank you for listening. Please check out aheartforyouth.org and like A Heart for Youth on Facebook. Have a blessed day.